No one noticed the crying at first. Keltar Station was never quiet. Its vast concourses echoed with the hum of antimatter coils, the hiss of pressure locks, and the overlapping languages of a dozen species. Noise was constant, expected, comforting. What wasn't expected was weakness, especially not in public. The child sat curled near the base of a support pillar in Transit Ring 7, for thin arms wrapped around a narrow torso, chitinous shoulders trembling as soft, broken sounds escaped its mandibles. The being was small even by its species standards, barely more than a hatchling, its translucent carapace marked with faint bioluminescent patterns that flickered erratically with emotion. Several passers-by noticed. None stopped. A pair of Virex traders glanced down briefly, their eye stalks narrowing in discomfort before they quickened their pace. A tall Run diplomat recoiled as if the sound itself were contagious. Even a maintenance drone paused, scanned the child, flagged it as non-critical organic distress, and continued on its route. Crying meant vulnerability. Vulnerability attracted predators, complications, responsibility. And responsibility was expensive. The child belonged to the Thalrun, an insectoid species known across the coalition for their rigid hierarchies and emotional restraint. Thalrun young were never unattended. They were never allowed to cry in public, which meant something had gone very, very wrong. Still, no one approached. Until the human did. Evan Mercer was already late. His transport to the outer colonies was boarding in less than 15 minutes, and the line at customs had been a nightmare. He jogged through the ring, boots thudding against polished alloy, one hand gripping a datapad, mind already rehearsing apologies to his supervisor. Then he heard it. It wasn't loud, not compared to the station's usual din, but it was wrong. A thin, keening sound, sharp with panic and loss. Evan slowed instinctively, scanning the crowd until he spotted the small figure huddled against the pillar. He stopped. For a moment, all he could think was how small the kid was. Then he swore under his breath. "Hey," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "That's not okay." He glanced around. No security. No guardians. Just people deliberately not looking. Evan exhaled, shoulders slumping in resignation. Of course it's my problem now. He approached slowly, careful not to startle the child. He remembered the orientation vids. Never rush an unfamiliar species. Maintain open posture. Lower yourself to appear non-threatening. So he crouched a few feet away and spoke softly. Hi there." The child flinched violently, bioluminescent patterns flashing bright crimson. One arm shot out defensively, claws trembling. Evan froze. Okay. Sorry," he said quickly, palms raised. "I'm not going to touch you. Promise." The child stared at him with wide, multifaceted eyes, breath hitching in uneven clicks. "You're safe," Evan continued, though he wasn't entirely sure why he said it. I mean, this is a pretty safe station. Mostly." The Thalrun's mandibles quivered. "And no," it whispered in broken trade common. "I am lost." That hit Evan right in the chest. "Lost," he echoed. "All right. That's fixable. We can work with that." He shifted his datapad aside and sat cross-legged on the floor, ignoring the curious and annoyed glances from passing aliens. "What's your name?" The child hesitated. Thalrun names were not given lightly, but fear won out. "Salith," it said quietly. "I'm Evan," he replied, smiling. "I'm human. We're kind of new around here." Salith studied him, head tilting. "You are very loud." Evan snorted despite himself. "Yeah, we get that a lot." For the first time, the child's lights dimmed from panic red to a cautious amber. It didn't take long to piece together what had happened. Salith had been traveling with a delegation, something ceremonial, something important. There had been a crowd, a security alert, people running, strong hands pushing Salith aside to protect an elder. And then silence. No familiar pheromones. No guiding signals. Just strangers and noise, and the terrifying realization that no one was coming back. Thalrun children were taught independence early, but not abandonment. Evan listened, jaw tightening with every halting sentence. "That's rough, kid," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Salith's lights flickered uncertainly. "You are not Thalrun. Why do you care?" Evan blinked. It was such a simple question. Honest. Logical. He shrugged. "Because you're crying." The child processed this. "Others heard me." "Yeah," Evan said, not bothering to hide the bitterness. "They did." Silence stretched between them. Then Salith asked, "Will you leave too?" Evan didn't answer right away. He thought about his missed transport, his job, the long list of reasons to flag security and walk away. Then he looked at the trembling child and felt something old and stubborn rise in his chest. "No," he said firmly. "Not until we find your people." Salith's lights flared softly, an emotion Evan's translator struggled to label. Hope. Security took notice eventually. A trio of coalition peacekeepers approached, hands resting on their weapons as they assessed the situation. One of them, a scaled Korthan, tilted his head at Evan. "You are interfering with an active civilian matter," the peacekeeper said. Evan didn't stand. "I'm helping a lost kid," he replied evenly. "If that's a crime, write me up." The Korthan looked to Salith, then back to Evan. "The child is Thalrun. Their people do not accept outside involvement." Salith shrank closer to Evan. Evan felt that stubbornness harden into steel. "Then maybe their people shouldn't lose their kids in a crowd," he said. The peacekeeper bristled. "Human." "Evan," he corrected. A tense moment passed. Then, unexpectedly, Salith spoke. "I wish to stay with a human," the child said, voice shaking but resolute. "He is a warm." The peacekeepers exchanged glances. Physical warmth. Emotional reassurance. Humans were known for both. Protocol wavered. "Fine," the Korthan said at last. "But only until Thalrun authorities arrive." Evan nodded. "Works for me." They waited. Evan told Salith stories about Earth, about rain, about how humans sometimes cried too and didn't explode from shame. He let the child hold his finger with two careful claws, grounding itself through contact. Around them, whispers spread. A human, sitting on the floor, comforting a Thalrun child. Unheard of. When the Thalrun delegation finally arrived, they came in force, tall, imposing figures in ceremonial armor, pheromones sharp with authority and restrained fury. The eldest knelt before Salith. "You are unharmed?" Salith hesitated, then looked at Evan. "Yes," the child said. "Because of him." The elder turned, multifaceted eyes fixing on the human. "You violated our customs," the Thalrun said. "You interfered." Evan stood slowly, heart pounding, but his voice steady. "Yeah," he said. "I did." A ripple passed through the delegation. "Why?" Evan shrugged again. "Because a kid was crying." Silence. Then something extraordinary happened. The elder bowed. A full, formal gesture of respect. "In your species," the elder said carefully, "is compassion instinctive?" Evan thought for a moment. "Not always," he admitted. "But when it matters, yeah, we show up." The Thalrun considered this. "Then humanity is dangerous," the elder said. Evan grimaced. "We've been told." But the elder's light softened. "Dangerous," it repeated, Because you care for those who are not your own. The story spread across the coalition in days. About the human who stopped. About the child who cried. About a species that ignored every rule of self-interest to do something profoundly inefficient and profoundly right. Humanity earned a new reputation that day. Not conquerors. Not diplomats. Not even warriors. But guardians. And whenever a lost child cried on a distant station, someone always remembered. Everything changed the moment a human chose to kneel. The first time Evan Mercer saw Salith again, the child was no longer small. The Coalition Assembly Hall was filled to capacity, its vaulted ceiling glowing with the colors of dozens of species. Delegates sat in layered tiers, translators humming softly as history unfolded in real time. Evan stood near the back with the other civilian observers, older now, streaks of gray threading his hair, hands folded behind his back like he didn't quite believe he belonged there. He almost didn't recognize the Thalrun stepping forward to speak. Salith stood tall, carapace fully formed, bioluminescent markings bright and steady, no longer flickering with fear, but pulsing with confidence and control. Ceremonial armor traced their frame, etched with symbols Evan didn't understand but somehow felt. When Salith's gaze swept the chamber, it stopped. Locked. On him. The Thalrun's lights flared, not red, not amber, but a brilliant gold that rippled outward like sunlight through water. A murmur passed through the assembly. Salith inclined their head toward the presiding elders, then turned fully to face the hall. I speak today, they said, voice clear and resonant, on behalf of the Thalrun and on behalf of those who cannot yet speak for themselves. The chamber stilled. There was a time, Salith continued, when my people believed strength was silence, that survival meant standing alone, that showing distress was failure. Their mandibles tightened, just slightly. I was taught those things, and then I was lost. Evan's chest tightened. I cried, Salith said, and no one answered. Images appeared above the dais, archival footage from Keltar Station, a small, shaking child, crowds passing by. Then another image, a human, sitting on the floor. Salith raised one clawed hand. Accept him. The assembly leaned forward as one. The human did not know my customs, Salith said. He did not know my worth. He did not ask what I could offer in return. Salith's lights brightened. He only saw that I was afraid. The image shifted. Evan crouched beside the child, palms raised, awkward and earnest. That moment changed the course of my life, Salith said, and it changed my species. A ripple of astonishment passed through the chamber. Since that day, Salith continued, the Thalrun have revised our doctrines. We no longer treat compassion as weakness. We no longer abandon the vulnerable to preserve pride. Salith turned slightly, gesturing toward the human delegation. We learned this from humanity. The words hung heavy in the air. Humans are inefficient, Salith said calmly. They waste time on strangers. They risk themselves for those with no power. They stop when stopping gains them nothing. A pause. That makes them dangerous, Salith said, echoing the words spoken long ago. Not because they conquer, but because they care. Applause began slowly, one species, then another, until the sound filled the hall like thunder. Evan didn't clap. He couldn't. His vision blurred as Salith turned fully toward him and performed a gesture no Thalrun had ever offered to an offworlder. A bow. Deep. Unreserved. Evan Mercer, Salith said, voice softer now, meant only for him. You stayed. Evan swallowed hard. Yeah, he said quietly, smiling despite the tears. I did. After the assembly adjourned, Salith found him in the corridor overlooking the stars. I was afraid you would not remember me, Salith admitted. Evan laughed softly. Kid, I never forgot you. Salith tilted their head. Bioluminescence warming. The younglings of my world are taught a new lesson now. Oh yeah, Evan asked. What's that? Salith looked out at the vast, uncaring universe beyond the glass. If you are lost, they said, and you cry, listen carefully. Evan followed their gaze. Because somewhere, Salith finished, a human will hear you. And, for the first time in a long while, Evan felt like the universe was just a little less cold.